Hi besties, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Rachel and welcome to my July TBR. You guys, I'm very excited for this month. I have a lot of amazing books. I have a few 5-star hopefuls on this TBR. I feel like July is going to be a really great reading month. I am of course going to be continuing to participate in ROMANTASYATHON, which is a 2-month-long reading challenge created and hosted by Tori at Tori Between Pages. If you want to join, it is not too late. The reading challenge started in June, but you can definitely hit many prompts in the month of July. I will have Tori's announcement video linked down below so you can get all the information from her. But because of that, I definitely have a lot of stunning fantasy romance on my TBR that I really hope I love. All right, so let's just get straight into my July TBR with my first book that I want to read next month. This is a 5-star prediction. If I do not give this book 5 stars, I don't know what's wrong. Like, I don't know what's not clicking, but this is a book that I have seen not only a lot of my friends give 5 stars to, but a few weeks ago, I did a video asking you all what your 5-star books of 2024 were so far at this point in the year, and many of you mentioned The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. Really looking forward to this book. This is a fantasy. I know that it follows a mother and son. I think it's a very character-driven story. I don't know much else, but I want to keep it that way. I want to go in with little information and just discover this plotline as I go. I've also heard that this is a very emotional book, and one thing about me, I love when a book makes me cry. Like, bonus points for any book that ruins my life a little bit, and I'm hoping that The Sword of Kaigen does that. The next book on my July TBR is This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. So this is the first book in a trilogy, and it is a YA fantasy romance. This book has been marketed as Game of Thrones meets the Persian Empire, which I think sounds really fantastic. I have definitely been influenced by my friend Erin over at Booked and Busy. She recently read, I think, the whole trilogy, and she really enjoyed it. So it definitely got me very excited. This book has been on my radar for a very long time, and I think I've put it on multiple TBRs, so it's definitely time for me to pick this up. I also think that we have a bit of a love triangle in this trilogy, which is always a good time. Love the drama. So I'm looking forward to trying out This Woven Kingdom. The next book on my July TBR is A Crown This Cold and Heavy by Stasia Stark. So this is the 3rd book in the Kingdom of Lies series and the 2nd to last book in the series. The finale just came out, I want to say in June, and because of that, I think that the series has definitely just been more at the forefront of my mind, and so I want to continue on with it. If you don't know, this is an adult fantasy romance, and in the first book, our main character, Priska, she lives in a world where you cannot have magic. Having magic is forbidden, it is punishable by death, so of course our girl has magic, and unfortunately it does end up getting revealed, so she has to run away, try to find a new place to live, start a new life. On her travels, she ends up running into this group of mercenaries, and at first she's very terrified of them. They don't really want anything to do with her, but after sort of getting to know one another, they realize that they could mutually benefit each other, and so they decide to stick together. The series really takes off from there. We have an enemies to lovers romance, and the 2nd book ended in an absolutely crazy way, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in this 3rd installment. The next book on my July TBR is a book that I am very excited for. I think this is my most anticipated book of July, and that is The Throne of Broken Gods by Amber V. Nicole. So this is the 2nd book in the Gods and Monsters series, the 1st book being the Book of Azrael, which I did read this month. It was actually a reread, and it was so good. It was a 5-star read. It is literal perfection. Every single page I loved. There's nothing I would change about that book, and I really hope that I feel the same way about book 2. If you don't know what the Gods and Monsters series is about, this is an urban fantasy romance series. So in the 1st book, we are following Diana Martinez, who is a stunning female main character. She is such a badass. She is so sarcastic. She's a little bit morally gray. She's also like a fashion girly, which I absolutely love. And she ends up begrudgingly teaming up with a kind of like exiled god who the world has not seen for a very long time. The two of them team up to search for a very important artifact, and they have a little enemies to lovers dynamic. It is so good. Really what I love about the 1st book, and I hope we will continue to see and add on to in this next book and future books to come, is this world feels so big. The story feels so expansive. We have so many characters, so many different creatures, so many different plot lines. The stakes feel so high and just so grand, and I really love that. In the 1st book, it is dual POV between Sam Kyle and Diana, and I have seen that in future books there's even more POVs added. I don't know if that happens here or in the next one, but I'm really looking forward to that because multi-POV fantasy is my absolute favorite. In the way that the Book of Azrael ended, I am not okay. Neither is Diana, and I'm so excited to see what happens. I think it's gonna be so dramatic and crazy, and I just have very high hopes for The Throne of Broken Gods. The next book that I want to read in the month of July is A Promise of Peridot by Kate Golden. So this is the 2nd book in the Sacred Stone series, the 1st book being A Dawn of Onyx, which is a very fun, fast-paced fantasy romance, and the sequel just came out a few months ago. I'm particularly really looking forward to this to see how the romance develops. I feel like the strength of the series is the romance in the characters. That is really at the forefront, and And while we did have a lot of romantic development in A Dawn of Onyx, I want to see how it plays out in book 2. I think there's much to be desired still, and I'm really excited to get back with Cain and Arwen and see where their romance is at. The next book on my July TBR is 5 Broken Blades by Mai Corlin. So this book has been advertised as a more adult version of Six of Crows. I do get a little bit nervous when anyone compares something to Six of Crows because Six of Crows is one of my favorite books of all time. It is the blueprint for the ragtag team of misfits taking on a heist. So I'm going into this book maybe lowering my expectations a little bit, but I think that this book does sound really fun. We do have multi-POV again. I've also heard that there's a lot of humor and wit in this book, which I'm looking forward to. And I have seen some mixed reviews, but I'd say more positive. So I'm hopeful that I do connect with it. I definitely like the idea of this book and the setup, so I'm hopeful that I end up enjoying it. The next book on my July TBR is Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Rorick. So this is the first book in the Legacy series by this author. She also wrote the Lady of Darkness series, which I have been reading over the last few months. I'm actually going to be starting the finale of that series today, and I'm so excited to pick that up, but also so nervous and feeling a little bit sad about leaving that world. But thankfully, this series exists in the same universe as Lady of Darkness, so all of her series are going to be connected. I don't know if you have to read Lady of Darkness first, but I definitely think that your experience will be better if you have all of that background knowledge. But this book is a dark fantasy romance, and the general premise of this book is we have Legacy, which are kind of like gods, and then the Fae in this book do get selected to be a source for the Legacy. Our female main character ends up getting tied to a particularly, I think, evil, dangerous, dark source, and I think they're going to have a romance. I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't really tell you on the back like who she's going to end up with, or doesn't heavily imply it like a lot of fantasy romance blurbs do. So I don't know if she's going to end up with that Legacy or what's going to happen, but I think it just really turns her world upside down. She learns a lot more about the kingdom that this Legacy rules. I don't know a lot about this book going into it, but that's okay because I really do enjoy Melissa K. Rorick's writing style. I have very high hopes for this book. I've seen a ton of praise for it, and I'm really excited to pick up a new series by her. The next book on my July TBR is Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. So this is the second book in the Lakefront Billionaires series. The first book was Love Redesigned, and I read that in December, and I loved it. It was so good and so cute. This book I feel like has an even better setup, so I'm really looking forward to it. It has one of my absolute favorite tropes, which is nanny single dad. You guys know Heartless is like my favorite romance of all time, and the fact that this has a somewhat similar setup to that makes me very eager to read this. I also think we do a bit of traveling in this book, which I really love in contemporary romance, and I've heard that this book is pretty hard-hitting. I've seen people say that they cried multiple times while reading this, which absolutely bonus points for that. So I'm looking forward to picking this up. I really think I'm going to love this series overall because of how much I loved Love Redesigned, and I'm looking forward to reading Raphael and Ellie's story. All right, so the last 3 books on my July TBR are going to be rereads. So the first reread that I'm going to do in July is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. So this is a YA fantasy romance. I'm sure you've heard of it. This book has been absolutely everywhere. I am rereading this in preparation of the sequel Reckless, which is coming out in July. I also might pick that up in July, kind of depending on how I'm feeling, but I do want to reread this book to refresh myself. I did not love Powerless. I feel like I am one of the few who did not, but I loved the ending. The ending was really good and definitely reeled me in and made me want to pick up book 2. This could be a situation where I think the first book is kind of the weakest, and then the series really strengthens as the series goes on. I want to give Reckless a shot just because I thought the ending was so wild. It was so fun. It was so unexpected, and I just want to see what happens. So I am going to reread this. Hopefully I'll like it a little bit more upon reread, who knows? But regardless, I am definitely going to continue on with Reckless because I am definitely curious enough to see what happens. The next reread that I'm going to do in the month of July is Guild by Raven Kennedy. So I've decided I'm gonna go on a little bit of a journey, and I am going to read the entire Plated Prisoner series. I have read Guild, Glint, and Gleam, but I read those books over 2 years ago, so I absolutely need to reread them and refresh myself. I remember the big stuff, but I do not remember the details. So I'm going to start off with rereading Guild this month, and I'm looking forward to it. The Plated Prisoner series has a ton of fans, and I want to see what happens in this series, and particularly, I'm really looking forward to the finale, kind of seeing how things wrap up. If you don't know, this is an adult fantasy romance series, and it is a bit of a King Midas retelling. The story definitely deviates from that after the first 2 books, I want to say, but I do remember enjoying the first 3. I just did not end up picking up Glow when it came out. I kind of lost my motivation and momentum with this series, but I don't know, I've just been thinking about this book. I want to read it, and I am going to do just that. I'm going to read the whole series. I hope that I like it, and I'm looking forward to revisiting this first book. All right, and then the final book on my July TBR, the final reread that I am going to do. She is a bit of a TBR veteran, but it's time for her to get off of the TBR TBRs. It's time for her to be read, and that is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. I have been technically doing a reread of the Throne of Glass series since last June. It has taken me a year to get here, and I am committed. I have put this book on many TBRs. I have said in vlogs, oh, I might pick up Kingdom of Ash this week. I didn't, but I'm committed to it. I want to finish out my reread. I absolutely love this series. I haven't picked this book up because I don't like love it or anything like that. This is actually one of my favorite books in the series. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I think it's literal perfection. I think I've just been putting it off because this book kind of ruins my life every time I read it, but I think that's gonna be the vibe in July. Hopefully I have a few books ruin my life. So Kingdom of Ash is the finale of Throne of Glass, and Throne of Glass is an amazing fantasy series. If you have not read it, it is absolutely stunning. You should pick it up. But July is the month. We are reading this book. I will be talking about this book in my July wrap up if it is the last thing I do. If I only read one book in the month of July, it will be Kingdom of Ash. I am committed to it. I've been thinking about this book much more lately, and it just needs to happen, and I'm tired of it staring at me every single time I walk by my shelf. So we're gonna do it in the month of July. Kingdom of Ash will get read. All right, friends, so that is it. Those are my July reading plans. Let me know, what are you going to be reading in July? What is your top priority read for this month? And if you made it to this point in the video and you wanted to let me know, go ahead and leave. Let's do the rain cloud emoji, some type of rain emoji for Reign of Shadows and Endings. Please make sure that you're following me on Instagram and Goodreads. They will always be linked down below. I really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I love you all so much, and I will catch you guys in the next one.